Hello and welcome to Arts Way Out, episode number 6. Arts Way Out is an initiative by the German embassy here in Israel. And on each episode, we meet two creators from Israel and from Germany, each time from a different discipline. So today I'm very happy to talk with two engineer artists, a musician, so we have in Dresden, in Germany, Morith Simon Geist, and Liat Segal, originally from Tel Aviv, but currently in a visit in New York. And we're going to have a little chat about their work. Both of them come from a mix of technology and art, which is very interesting. So maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your background. So Moritz, where do you come from? What did you do before?
So yes, thanks for inviting me, Anat. And I started off as more of a classical musician, playing guitar and piano and clarinet. But in really early times, I basically started to think about that music should also be kind of made with like objects, and I really like to play around with like small objects. And so I maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, I started to build my first robots, and I also studied engineering to bring these two things together, like the music side and the engineering side. So this is basically my background.
Okay, yeah. And Liat, tell us about your background.
So I originally come from software. I have a master's degree in bioinformatics, machine learning, and working with data. And that's what I did also later on when I was working in the industry. I was working as a researcher for Microsoft, but about the same time I started playing with electronics. And at first it was like geeky projects, little games that I did for myself, but then they grew bigger and bigger. And I realized that what I was finding or doing actually is my material in art, because that was the essence of what I was doing. So I quit my day job at Microsoft, and that's what I do full-time since, art using technologies of various kinds.
Okay, so maybe we dive in and take a look at some of your projects from the past. So if you want to choose one or two projects that were meaningful for your work, and we can watch them together and chat about them.
That was my first installation called MR808 in 2012. And the thing is, actually, I'm not an artist. I don't consider myself to be an artist. I mean, I'm working in the art field and I'm doing a lot of artwork. But at the same time, I actually didn't have any connections with the art world before this installation, because I mean, I was doing music and I also was playing in punk bands, but this was more of I don't know, I never studied art, for example, and I had no connection to this media art field and to what a curator is and all these things. And I also didn't have any interest in that. So it was really an intrinsic wish to create something which does music, like all the robotic instruments that you saw at the installation, at this MR808 installation. I really had the idea, okay, I have to get rid of the computer. I was doing music before and just composing a lot on the computer and also playing with instruments. But I didn't like the sound making with the computer, and especially electronic music, because it's kind of inside a box, like with a synthesizer or with a computer, you always have something like inside. And I wanted to take this apart and just like to see everything where the sound is coming from. that was in 2009 actually, and it took about like 3 years to build. I did a lot of experiments, and then eventually I finished my studies, like my engineering studies at the university, and I worked as an engineer, as a research engineer at a research facility in Germany for some time. But I realized that having like an office job is like really bad. I didn't like this. So I had this this installation, and I put it in the internet, and it was a hit. It was like really out of luck that this video that you just saw, and also like another video, that they were perceived pretty well. And so I got my first booking to play shows, and it all happened by accident actually. So I played in the first year, I maybe played like 60 shows with the installation, which is quite a lot when you're just starting. And I realized that it's much better to be an artist actually than to work in an office. And so I was starting my PhD, or I should have started my PhD actually in engineering and physics. And I thought, okay, it's not my world. I cannot do like the research, and I'm just like gonna be an artist now. Okay, and that was in 2012, and since then, that was the moment when I decided I would be an artist. And since then, I'm basically doing only this robotic music things. Yeah, that's all.
Let's see one of your past works, and please tell us about it.
Sure. So I think one of like a key moment in my trajectory would be my first solo show. That was about 6 years ago. It took place in Jerusalem, in a Hansen house, which used to be a leprosy colony, and is now a wonderful cultural center and art and education center. The exhibition was called People You May Know, like the Facebook suggestion to get new friends, to make new friends in the virtual world, which is of course completely different from what we used to consider as making new friends. And it dealt with our ability to hear and to be heard and to create intimacy and conversation, like a real conversation in today's social media and over and this world of so much data that we're exposed to all the time. And my feeling was that we're exposed to so much input that can be personal, that can be identified with real people, but it doesn't get in us. Like we can hear something that makes us feel emotional, and then a minute later we'll forget completely all about it. And in the exhibition, I dealt with these issues through 4 installations. There were location-based installations that covered the entire area of the Hansen house. One of them was a sound installation that was kind of like an animation of sound in space. So it had 76 speakers hanging from the ceiling, each one in an aluminum ball that directed the sound downwards, and the sound moved from one speaker to another. And what you heard if you walked with it is me reading Facebook text of my Facebook friends, creating this virtual identity that doesn't exist for itself. And in this sense, in the way that it was heard, I created kind of like a manipulation on the visitors, because I made them walk in a specific path that was generated constantly by the system, by the computer. And you could see people walking in groups in the gallery space, following the sound. The third work in this exhibition was this painting machine that painted with a paintbrush that had a pump that pumped a drop of water every few seconds into the paintbrush and kept it wet. And it wrote the names of the people that I took their text from on Facebook. So it gave a little bit back the original identities back to this location, but in a way that the names were written with the water. It was on a plaster surface, plaster like a construction, simple material. But then the water evaporated, and this feed of real people, if there is something like that, real people, evaporated and disappeared from our feed or from our mind as well. the last work in this exhibition was actually the first time I showed a work that didn't have any electronics in it, but it had also the mathematical thinking maybe, or the technological thinking, in the way that I created an image that was made out of over 1,000 pixels, but each pixel was a physical tube. And what you see, if you get to a place that you can actually never be at, just above, is the Facebook placeholder of the feminine icon that you get before you put your own personality there, before you put your own profile picture.
I have to mention that it was 4 years ago that actually Moritz came to Jerusalem, and he did a performance in the Hansen House.
Cool. So you know it.
The exact same place. So here's another thing you have in common.
Actually, I know Liat's work for a long time already, because when I did the research for my first installation, I stumbled over a project which is called Robotic Drums from 2010 from you, and I knew your work, and I knew, like, okay, there's somebody in I think it was in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem, but there's somebody. Or was it in Tel Aviv? Yeah, it was in Tel Aviv.
In Bat Yam.
There's somebody working on robotic drums as well, and I mean, I reached out to a lot of people, and just by chance I didn't reach out to you by then. So,
so things are connected eventually. So I think that in my work also, I don't come from music, but I make collaborations with people that are very good at what they do, that I can't do. And for example, I have a lot of collaborations with musicians. And that work was one of these collaborations. So it was with Asaf Talmudi, with a musician, and later on with Shlomi Shaban, and like musicians that added things to the conversation that like I was thirsty to have, but didn't have the tools, like the musical tools. And together we created like new instruments as well that suddenly opened up the conversation of what is the creation of music and of installation, like and how they connect. And actually today I still deal a lot with sound, but usually more from the other side of I use sound as input to other works instead of creating the sound. So for example, there is the work Plate Recorder, which is also a collaboration with a ceramic artist. It was also actually presented at Hansen House. And so it's a collaboration with Ro'i Maayan, with the ceramic artist. And together we created this archive of sounds. So we asked people to send us recordings of sounds that had some story behind them, that had we asked to state the location and time of the recording, and we took it back to material. So of course it's very much inspired by records, by vinyls, but also by the ceramic process. So it's somewhere between a throwing wheel and a turntable. And with the sounds, we etched the overglaze of plates and created these records that were later sent to be fixed in the fire, and like in the old methods, not in new ones, but they're all connected, the old methods and the new ones in a sense. So what we saw here is not here it was a live performance where people actually came and just sang or talked or created their sounds. And this is just like the singer that we hear is just a visitor at the exhibition. Like, it's like randomly was there and started giving this opera piece. So, but it created a conversation, and that was, I think, the essence, like in this project.
And this brings me to another theme that is very also similar in your work. It's the interactivity with the public. These projects that the public is a part of and that can influence and react to. So this was a very good example, but I think it exists in almost all of your projects. And maybe we can see also in another project by you, Moritz. Also, I mean, the one we saw before is also interactive. But maybe we can see another example of an interactive one.
It's an installation which I did for, it was a commissioning work by a gallery or by a small museum here in Dresden. And it's basically based on a table with everyday items and robotic actuators, and people could really go there and basically manipulate the object. It was very funny because this was the first installation for me, which I put in a museum, and then I just left it there for half a year. And apart from having the fear that it's breaking and that I have to go there again, I went there from time to time, and it was on a campus of a university. And so every time I went there, the materials changed, like the stuff that was laying on the table, because you could just take it away. And not only did people like grab stuff and stole basically objects, most of the time people also put other stuff there. So in the end of the exhibition, there was like a totally different set of objects there. It was actually more than before. So people stole something, but they also added something. Maybe they exchanged it just. And I thought this was like really funny. I never expected this to be. And so looking at the sound things, I specifically wanted objects which didn't have like a sound design aspect, but at the same time which you could use for sound. And that was my intention with this installation, that people could explore like different objects and like see how they sound. And if I just like hit it here, then it sounds different to when I hit it here. And so things like that. And I mean, I wasn't standing beside the installation all the time, but I think it worked quite well, because every time I was there, there was a group of people around and just like playing random music.
Cool. So I wanted to ask you about, I mean, both of you have been exposing quite a lot around the world, traveling around the world, working, and we're talking about this interaction with people and everything. And then in the past few months, everything changed for all of us. So I would love to hear, what have you been doing during this time? Did you manage to create any new work? And if so, how was it influenced by the new reality? And yeah, how did you live this past, actually I'm saying month, but it's almost a year.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I don't know, Liat, can you tell us?
I didn't realize how much like this forced break was needed for me. So like just a minute before like the first lockdown, I just installed the new show, like one solo show, and then also one like a work in a large group show in a museum in Tel Aviv, and then everything stopped for like and like the shows were there, and suddenly like knowing that there is this installation that is also sensitive to time, that changes with time, and like the people should have like worked with it, that it's there waiting, was very strange, of course. But also on the other side, there was something that was very liberating in a way. And for the first time in years, I suddenly didn't have a project, and it was not terrifying, it was just strange. And I think that personally, it was very, very important for me to have this time. And suddenly, like I had, for a month and a half, I was working on a project with my father that was not art related. It was just building a tree house for my nephews, but like a very megalomanic tree house, because we suddenly had all this time and we wanted to do it for a long time, and we actually did it.
And for you, Moritz, how did you live this?
It's very mixed. I mean, I had it was a very uncool moment with the pandemic for me, because I just moved to a new studio in November of 2019. And when the pandemic started in February and March, I had to move out of my new studio again. And so now in the studio, which I'm now here in, it's very big. Actually, it's 200 square meter big, but I couldn't find like a smaller one right now. And so it was my idea to get like a big studio at some point and have people like a crew which do my stuff, but like doing this transition to like the next step of my work in this pandemic times, it's a little hard because now I have this big studio and I have to pay a lot of expenses every month. But at the same time, as Liat was telling, it's very unclear how the next year, or actually like the next years will be, because before I was playing around, I was playing mostly concerts. That's what my daily life was like, around maybe 50 per year or so. And this is like totally gone away, of course. I mean, I cannot travel anymore, and I substituted a lot of that with like live shows on the internet. I did a lot of streams, which was cool, and they were also paid pretty well. In Germany, you have a pretty decent funding structure for the cultural sector right now. But what I'm not fearing, like right now, everything's fine. But what I'm fearing is like the time in 1 year or 2 years when like the money is needed for other things. I mean, the cultural thing is important, but when you have like a whole society which is kind of suffering, then at some point the cultural money will be the first, or the funds will be the first thing that is located to like a different, to different things. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to think of it. I mean, I love my art. I just want to keep on doing it, and eventually I will, I will teach or something additionally to my job now.
And I saw online that you're working on this new installation. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do in the future, and I'm really curious to hear about this work.
There's my new installation called Vibrations, and I had this in mind for quite a long time, because normally I'm constructing my I'm thinking of my installations from a sound perspective. With the Vibrations installation, I want to get away from like this robotic, from this percussive techno sound, and I thought, okay, like what do I need as a musician? What do I need as a sound aesthetic? And I thought, okay, I'm gonna build something which has like a soft tone and which is more like an ambient focus, where you can sit down and listen. And at the same time, I was starting to work about 2 years ago, really in focus with a band called Mouse on Mars. They are an electronic duo from Germany, and they and we together did a lot of experiments with sound in the room. So like 360-degree sound, where like the different sounds are coming from different angles. And so then at some point, like this idea transformed in my mind that I will do an installation where I take like the vibraphone part. The vibraphone is like a classic instrument from like a classic jazz instrument, and I will take the different plates. Actually, I have one here. Oops. So I will take the different tones, and this is like the plate here. And then you have like a small electronic component, and this is only a prototype, of course, and to put them in the room so that you can actually walk inside the instrument. And this was both like this was both planned as like a concert instrument and as a installation which can run for several days. So this is why the installation group's pretty big, like 6 by 4 meters. And it can only be displayed in very big halls. Actually, I don't know how this will pan out, but one good thing is like that it can be displayed so that also like 10 people or 20 people can explore that. And so I think this will be possible also like in half a year or in 1 year. Other installations I did were always like for clubs, for example, for a music club, and this will take some time until I can play like big concerts with that. but like this installation where like people can just walk inside, I think this will be possible pretty soon. So that was by accident kind of an advantage with this installation. And yeah, then I threw a lot of other things into the installation as an AI compositioning algorithm, which I'm developing with the Ars Electronica in Linz right now, and a lot of other stuff. It's a very big project. It's like it runs for 2 years already, and I think it will be finished in 1 year already still. And I got a lot of funding partners, and we developed a lot of crazy technical things. It's don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Wow, so there's a lot to look forward to. And I really think that, yeah, you should do something together one day.
I would love that.
Yeah, me
I think
too.
that's only the beginning between us.
Yes, definitely. It feels really natural that you should work together somewhere.
For sure.
So thank you very much for being here today, and I really hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Anat.
Bye.
Bye.